Yeah, hi. My name is Sushant Gupte. And first of all, good morning. And to just give a heads up to our viewers as to what exactly the company is all about, I'll just give you a brief introduction on Marken. Marken UPS Healthcare Precision Logistics happens to be a advanced therapy subsidiary of UPS Healthcare, which unites expertise all across healthcare as well as complex secure logistics in order to drive success for their clients by way of innovation. It operates across more than 220 countries and territories and has a team of 4,000 experts. They orchestrate all around 6.6 million shipments every year across all temperature ranges. So this just gives a heads up of what exactly the company is all about and what they're doing. And to begin with, when I start the questions here, Marken operates in over 220 countries. What is the key to harmonizing such a massive global network while maintaining precision in healthcare logistics?
The first being having global standards, right, that are in place. The theory of operating within the standard, it's pretty easy for us to apply, but the practicality of that, and when we're talking about the 220 countries and territories, the practicality of keeping those global standards really requires a couple of healthy layers of compliance and standard. To make sure that we're, ensuring the effectivity and quality, really. So the layers, right? To give a little bit of insight, what that looks like. It really starts with the onboarding process. We have detailed procedures in place when we're taking a look at whether it be regional or going through the list there. Requires reviews from every relevant stakeholder within the organization, right? So it's operations, it's our technical team, quality, IT, sustainability, absolutely. And then within that evaluation or development process, we're able to launch global SOPs if there are any differences in that particular solution outside of our general global standards. We train our branches specific to where those solutions will be deployed. If we anticipate large scale usage, then we'll even go a step further and conduct in-person training. We operate out of a very robust quality management system that's really the backbone of everything that we do. Tests are generated, and that becomes part of the team members' yearly training and onboarding training. So, global standards is the overarching response to that, but it really involves several layers really to drive that compliance and standardization, harmonization throughout the network.
So, Michael, your Ready Now packaging catalog, it sounds revolutionary. Can you share how this mitigates risks when it comes to time and temperature sensitive shipments?
Yes, absolutely. We're really excited now to have our Ready Now catalog formalized. I mentioned in the previous response that there's an extensive onboarding review process. We solicit feedback from every key stakeholder. We don't want to make isolated decisions. We ultimately want to bring the best products into our network under this Ready Now catalog. Starting with the onboarding, we're constantly combing through the supplier qualifications to translate that into the effectivity operating in sort of real world scenarios. And for this, we conduct our own performance quality tests. We obviously have a large distribution and transportation network. So again, we're wanting to take the supplier qualifications and apply that to real world scenarios to simulate the transport of all of these advanced therapies, drugs, biological samples, etc. Sustainability is a really key component of what we are as an organization pushing forward with. So our sustainability group has a lot of input into ultimately what comes in or does not come into our Ready Now packaging catalog. We want to evaluate the operational effectivity. It's one thing to have a really neat, innovative designed shipping solution, but is this going to pass the rigors of the packaging preparation within our logistics network? Is it going to hold up to the elements when it's shipping through all kinds of different geographies? And then when it passes through that onboarding, our forecast and asset management team take over. So we need to understand the demand, where that demand is going to come from, in order for us to rebalance our network and make sure that we have these shipping solutions readily available to deploy even same day in a lot of cases. We really want to. We really want to make these solutions, which we know and understand and have vetted to be best in market, available rapidly within geographies based on that demand. And like I said, we have this technical expertise, very large and very specialized technical expertise within our organization. We have distribution and conditioning centers. And then on the backs of UPS, right, the largest premier packaging network. So when we're talking about a Ready Now catalog, yes, what we're talking about is the box, let's say, but the Ready Now packaging catalog encompasses not just the box, but all of the value proposition that comes along with it: the onboarding, the distribution, the transportation, and then the performance and quality, of course.
Great. Right. I mean, even our viewers would be really excited to know about the fact that what is the most complex shipment that Marken has actually orchestrated till date? I mean, what did it teach you?
So I've been with Marken a little over 4 years, so I unfortunately won't be able to answer what is the most complex that Marken has. I can certainly speak to one that sticks in my memory in the 4 years that I've been fortunate to be here. So it was probably within a month or two of me starting within Marken. I was in a previous role responsible for operations within the Northeast of the US. And one of our Pharma clients contacted us, and this is still at sort of the height of COVID. They contacted us because they had a single vial of treatment which needed to go from Midwest US to Australia in 2 days to meet a very specific dosing schedule of a terminally ill patient in Australia. So the vial was the only one available in the world of this medication. So if it failed, there was no backup to it. There was no stability data because it was very, very early on in the clinical trial stage. So keeping it in spec was super, super important. And the time or the transit time that was needed really limited our options for transportation. So commercial flights were not an option. The trouble at the time, because we were in COVID still, was that chartered aircraft, or excuse me, take it a step back, onboard courier was also not an option because at the time Australia had closed their borders to non-Australian residents. Right. So then we were going with, okay, let's take a look at chartered aircraft options. The problem is because flights were not operating in and out of Australia, a lot of the landing rights had expired. They had not been renewed. No one was flying in and out. So we were able to ultimately find a chartered aircraft. It took a couple of days, and we really leveraged the entire enterprise to locate this one aircraft who still maintained landing rights for Australia. But because of the temperature sensitivity, we could not risk just putting this in a regular, passive shipper. What we ended up doing is sending extra dry ice along with this shipper, and we were actually able to train the pilots and crew of the aircraft to replenish in flight as they were circulating through their flight schedule. It was a great story. We ended up delivering to the hospital about 8 hours prior to the dosing schedule. And for me personally, this was my first experience with, a life-saving therapy, something that was extremely critical, had a patient tied to it, and it really taught that, for me, what I absorbed was nothing is really impossible when you have this patient at the end of a shipment, right? You really dig deep and you turn over every stone, and at the end of the day, you design something bespoke for that shipment to execute it at the highest of level, a level of care that supersedes anything that we're doing in the transportation field.
And how happy were you after that once the shipment got delivered?
Oh, it was one of the more fulfilling moments of my career, honestly.
Sure.
I was brand new to Marken, my past life. I've always been in transportation, but it was a little bit more on like the general freight side. The level of fulfillment was amazing, quite honestly.
Sure.
And it certainly, there were a lot of long days and nights leading up to that. But it was all worth it, of course, when you're talking about how you can positively impact a patient like we did.
And I'm sure that whatever that you've learned from that particular incident, you would be obviously replicating a lot of it in the days to come, or probably in the events to come as well, because it would have taught you a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, something like that really sticks with you, right? I mean, you have that
Yes.
that level of care, that understanding, that fulfillment. You want to replicate it. You want to continue to push the boundaries of what we understand to be possible today, because of what you can accomplish when you start designing and start evolving what is possible.
Correct. Right. So, since becoming part of the UPS healthcare, how has Marken's service ecosystem evolved with time?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, because so much has evolved since Marken has become part of UPS healthcare. I'll try to link it or stay within how it's linked to our packaging as a service business offering.
Yeah.
So, one of the biggest has to do with the actual logistics, and it's the placement of our packaging, readying it for transportation, and then the actual live transportation of whatever we're putting in the shipping solution. So, UPS is industry leading in terms of on-time performance. It's the largest parcel network globally. So having that at our fingertips, it really opens up all kinds of different possibilities, and really provides a strong level of assurance that we're going to be able to execute on the transportation side. Distribution network, when we're taking a look at all of the infrastructure throughout the entire UPS enterprise, you're talking about tens of millions of square footage globally that we can tap into to really build a robust distribution network. Of course, be remiss to not mention it. Global organization, so we're able to benefit from global supplier partnerships, with a tremendous amount of buying power on the cold chain and just general packaging space. To be really fair, especially as of recent, as we've expanded our packaging as a service offering, right? We now have the expertise not just on clinical pharmaceuticals, but commercial and wholesale distribution. So we've really expanded out our expertise, and benefiting from that enterprise-wide ecosystem. And then the last thing I'll mention, the expanding portfolio of offerings, right? And this is most evident with the acquisition of M&X in the radiopharmaceutical space, which is now part of Marken UPS Healthcare Precision Logistics Advanced Therapy Division. So it's really allowing us to expand our service offerings to become, right, the single source complex transportation provider.
Okay, so it is well to be noted that traditional packaging vendors offer transactional solutions. And how does Marken's holistic packaging service as a service, PaaS model, fundamentally change the game for healthcare clients? Is there anything specific that you do in that?
Yes, absolutely. It's a great question. There's some tangible things that I can speak to, certainly. But I think it starts really what I can feel is with the culture, right? Our organization's culture, since I've joined, you can feel it right away. It's been built on that a shipment is not a shipment, but there's a patient behind it, right? So that
Yes.
philosophy as an organization rings through to every service line that we have within our portfolio. So this is why I mentioned earlier, right? We don't want to just position a box as a box, but this is what we really want to feel and understand, and to be enablers to allow us to aid in the transportation of these, at times, often than not, life-altering treatments, right? We simply don't want to hand over a box. Certainly that's possible, and there is a transactional element to what we're providing. But we really want to understand the goals, the complexities, so that we can fully leverage the strengths that I had mentioned before, right? The transportation aspect of it, the distribution network, the expertise, certainly. But we have a really, I'd like to say, robust value proposition, and it's not just the box, right? It's the culture, it's the UPS ecosystem, it's the expertise, and it's to bring it back to the example of the life-saving treatment. It's that fulfillment, it's that care.
Correct. Right. And I've seen that Marken regards itself to be packaging agnostic. How does this flexibility give clients an edge over competitors with the proprietary systems that you have in place?
Yeah, so this is a really good and interesting question. I was excited to respond to this one. So I want to start by saying, maybe clarify a little bit or expand on it, right? We want to position ourselves as agnostic, to the sense that our offerings are not tied to a specific family of systems or solutions, but our focus is meeting the various needs of our clients' complex supply chains. So we don't want to sort of say this is what we have in our offering, use this, right? We want to take a much more consultant type approach. So there's a lot involved in that, right? We want to understand our clients' time in transit, what their temperature stability data is, if they have a lot, right? So the product needs to stay at temperature before it's not fit for use for 48 hours. The time in transit on that specific lane is 72 hours. Okay, so now we have a little bit of a insight into what type of validation time we need to position within a specific packaging system. Then you start to get into the turnaround time for how quickly are they going to need the shipper from time of ordering until time of shipment. This allows us to hone in even further and start talking about, can we use durable packaging, reusable, or does it need to be a single use system? We want to take a look at the various packouts and what operational capabilities a client or shipping site might have, that will additionally continue to narrow down. Start taking a look at devices, for instance. Is it just needing to know the temperature data from a passive after the shipment is executed, or do they want and need real-time data? What are they looking to accomplish with the real-time data? Is it just to understand exceptions, or is it to take an analytical approach to the overall transportation and the dwell time within each transit point? And then really we want to understand what's driving the decision. What will drive the decision on what we're going to ultimately move forward with? Is it cost? It's probably always all of these things, right? But in terms of order of priority, is cost the number one priority, or sustainability targets is a really, really big emphasis in the market, which is great to see now. Is it ease of use? Do we need to consider just-in-time inventory requirements. So all of this evaluation and understanding and engagement from our side with the client ultimately leads us and our experts to be able to pare down this vast offering of over 1,500 independent solutions down to a very slimmed, informed recommendation that is going to tick all of the boxes that our client is looking for.
Right. So I mean, just to check out one thing with you, Michael. I mean, if you were to, balance between cost and sustainability, right? Because sustainability is something which is obviously gained a lot of ground these days. So where do you, rate both? I mean, how do you rate both? Is it going to be cost first or sustainability first? I mean, how is it going to be?
Well, so it's a really interesting question, right? Because the technology for shippers, when we're talking about sustainability, obviously is not as mature as some of the other solutions that are non-recyclable or sustainable that are in the market. And with that comes typically what we see is something that is sustainable, recyclable is a tad more expensive than the single-use non-recyclable. But what we like to engage in is there's a cost associated with the disposal of single-use non-recyclable. So if we're just taking a look at unit price to unit price, yes, we're going to say this one financially might not make more sense. It takes the sustainability, but we can't absorb that cost into our organization. But if you're then taking it a step further and evening it out, it starts to make a little bit more sense. No longer do you have to pay for the disposal. No longer do these shippers have to stack up on the warehouse floor before they're able to be disposed, right? It can happen immediately. So you really have to, in order to make the full evaluation, compare apples to apples, and that is more than just a unit price.
With pre-qualified packaging solutions, how do you balance standardization with the requirement for customized orders in case of urgent scenarios?
Well, so it's really going to start with our supplier engagement and the qualification, right? So whether a solution is offered through our Ready Now catalog or what we refer to as our on-demand offering, we're always going to ensure that our partners are trusted. They've gone through our very rigorous qualification process. Our teams of technical experts, right? They're going to review each and every supplier qualification, regardless if this is regularly stocked as part of our Ready Now catalog through our logistics system, or it's part of that on-demand, more customized solution. I really want to emphasize, really simply put, we're not going to put our trust and the safety of our client's supply chain or patient at risk and sacrifice quality or precision, right? We're just never going to go down that road. But we want to continue to innovate, right? So we have within our packaging as a service team what we refer to as the innovation lab. So it's members of our technical and our commercial team. We're constantly soliciting feedback from our business development managers or through trade shows. We're really trying to understand what the market is really looking for, what types of challenges exist within the various business lines of pharmaceutical transportation. And because we have these really strong partnerships and really with industry leading suppliers, we're in a position to not just go off the shelf with solutions, but really engage to build these bespoke, very specified solutions to solve these real world challenges that exist within the transportation sector of pharmaceutical.
But which actually brings me to this question. I mean, obviously, it has certain time frame associated with it. But then, of the three modes of transport, if you talk about road, air, or rail, which according to you think is more suitable for, apt for this kind of work that you're doing? I mean, is it going to be air all the time? Is it going to be only ships? How's it going to be?
So on the clinical side, I will say the vast majority is going via air. I would say second to that, where it's possible, utilize road transportation. Ocean transportation is not really something that we see a lot of on the clinical side, and it's mainly because we're not dealing in large quantity shipments, right?
Right.
There is going to be drug distribution and transfer of product between pharma company A to pharma company A in different regions. So we certainly have seen over the last, call it year and a half, a bit more inquiries coming about the possibility of using ocean freight. But on the
Okay.
clinical side, as I mentioned, right, it's smaller quantities. Now, commercial, right, you see all kinds of different truckloads because it's larger quantities. A lot of ocean freight moves on the commercial side. And if we link that back to sustainability, right, it's great to see the adaptation of lesser environmental impacting modes of transport. But
Right.
there's always this balance, right? We want to make sure that we're getting product into the market when we need it and mitigating the risk of product going out of temperature scope. But we also have these really important environmental commitments and financial commitments, right, to our organization and to the industry as a whole. So there's always these sort of like varying evaluations that we take into consideration when we are speaking to clients, right? We really pride ourselves on not just having a solution that we want to position. We really want to understand holistically the
Right.
ins and outs of the supply chain.
I mean, when you talk about time-sensitive therapies like CAR T cells, which can't afford packaging delays, how does PAS literally save lives in this particular scenario? Is there anything particular that you do in this?
Absolutely. It really starts with our vast fleet of owned assets. I think that's really important because we're able to readily deploy these on short notice. Our forecasting and asset management teams, we work hand in hand with our cell and gene group. As I mentioned, that's part of our larger advanced therapy division within Marken, UPS Healthcare Precision Logistics, and we're constantly evaluating the demand to be able to rebalance this owned fleet of shipping solutions to make sure that they're in the right geography, they're prepped for shipment, so that we can readily deploy those at a moment's notice in some cases. I mentioned in an earlier topic about the need to innovate. I certainly think that while innovation might not in a right now scenario, but we'd be remiss if we didn't take a look at what advances in technology is out there so that we can be at the forefront of various shipping solutions when they come to market. We have a tremendous amount of expertise within the liquid nitrogen shipping sector. One of our team members on the technical team, his background is in LN2 shipping. So, pair our fleet up with our balancing and connectivity to our client and advanced therapy division, along with this really robust expertise and eye forward in innovation. I think all of that together forms a really robust offering to allow us to be ready at a moment's notice and mitigate those packaging delays.
I mean, we talk about the next frontier for packaging as a service, drones for all the right reasons, or blockchain, or is the focus on scaling what already works for you?
I would say it's both, really. I think if you're not advancing, Marken has shown in the years past our ability and our really appetite to innovate, to advance. And I think that if you're not doing both in that instance, right, scaling what is working, proven solutions that are already in themselves robust, but also not innovating, right, then you're probably staying a little bit stagnant. I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that rooted in our fundamentals of innovation is listening. What are our clients asking for? What's the patient impact look like, or what is their experience within the pharmaceutical transportation? What is the industry as a whole sort of looking for? And this becomes our guiding way, right? This is what ultimately we're hoping to partner and solve for. We have some really exciting new developments that we're preparing to launch in the next 3 to 6 months as part of our Ready Now catalog. So I would say stay tuned for those. We're really excited about some of those new advancements. But I also wanna make sure to mention here that anything that we're going to do, any type of innovation, is going to be anchored with quality and performance, but scalability as well, right? We want to push the boundaries of what's possible while also maintaining the balance of having best in industry solutions, solving real world scenarios, and again, supporting the distribution and those advancements of life-changing treatments. So, I sort of answering without giving away too much. We're not exactly ready to launch some of these really exciting things, but I would say stay tuned because there's some really neat stuff coming out in the next 3 to 6 months.
Now that you've told us that, obviously, I won't delve deep into what are the products or what are the launches that you have on mind. But then, since there are certain geopolitical tensions which are in the offing, obviously regulatory landscape is something which is a different level altogether. So the strategies do shift, because considering the fact that there's a lot of tension which is currently on. So does that actually change your strategy over a period of time, or how is it going to be?
Our offering right now already has a lot of sort of variability into it, right? So we're speaking of geopolitical events, right? We still need to get product in country. That's always going to happen, right? There's always going to be the need to get product in country. But maybe it takes longer to get through because of those geopolitical tensions. Maybe there's not high likelihood of getting the empty boxes back after the delivery has been executed. And all of those things right now we can solve for. But yes, it does, and it can change our strategy, what we're taking a look to do, longer term. I can speak a little bit, although I'm certainly not the expert of it, but UPS has experience with drone delivery in very specific areas of the world. I talked to a colleague a couple of years back and gave the example of how they were able to deliver into some really isolated parts of Africa vaccine, and that was done through the use of drone delivery. So some of these advancements are out there. I think it's important to keep in mind that scalability part that I mentioned, right? Our drone delivery is going to make sense in really large populated areas? Maybe not. But it's something that we ought to have in our playbook, right? Because we want to, again, support the global distribution of these advancements, because there are advancements happening every day, and right. We need to make sure that we're able and positioned to support and get them to market, get them into the hands of patients that need them.
Yeah, and finally, how does the UPS network amplify packaging as a service capability?
The connection between Marken and UPS, I could probably spend days talking about this, because it really is so unique, and it is really powerful when you talk about the flexibility and the value propositions that you can really drive it. So, not to be a broken record or repeat it too many times, but some of the things I had mentioned already, the industry leading transportation, best in class performance, large distribution network, those things certainly exist. But I want to take it down a little bit more to some examples on packaging, maybe specifically. So we're able to create these really unique, what we call operating plans, And it allows us, one, to mitigate risk by eliminating some touch points within the overall transportation. But it also allows us to have greater flexibility when we're talking about overall, transportation. So an example, right? If we are placing or even collecting a shipment from a shipping location, needs to go from point A to point B. It needs to get on an aircraft. There are limited aircraft available on a certain day on a flight schedule. It departs at same time every day, and a couple hours before that, it has a cutoff time when you have to deliver the shipment in order to get on that aircraft. Couple hours maybe before that, depending on the distance from collection site to airport, you need to collect it, right? So you have these limitations. When we're able to create these special operating plans, we're able to mitigate some of that dwell time, that time that is lost because of flight schedules. So we're able to have a later call time that we're able to offer our clients. They can call us later in the afternoon, and we're still able to execute shipments for next day delivery. It's really a unique offering, and at the end of the day, right, what we're talking about is shaving a day off of transit time where hours sometimes matter. And we're mitigating risk of loss or damage or temperature instability. Again, all of these things are super critical to the success of a study or a transport. And then we have some really unique automation on the reverse logistics side of the packaging, right? So again, mitigation of loss, ultimately having positive financial implications on our clients when our loss rates on our on the actual shipping solutions are mitigated.
What do you think is the bigger challenge for you? Say a regulatory landscape which differs from geography to another geography, or probably something that your competitors would be doing. Obviously, I mean, there are two different aspects to it, but then still, I mean, if we compare both, which is the bigger challenge?
It probably differs like one day to the next, right? We talked a little bit about some of the geopolitical tensions and certainly don't want to, dwell into that now, but that's ever changing, right? So what might be okay to manage today completely shifts tomorrow, depending on, what's happening geopolitically, globally. So I would say, like, we would be remiss if we weren't always aware of both. And continuing to advance, pivot in relation to both. Oftentimes when you run into challenges, when we're talking about transportation, there's usually not one little thing that you can do to change the outcome. It's usually a series of events that you have to backtrack and do your root cause preventive and corrective action. And I think if you take the same approach within the industry as a whole, you're better positioning yourself for success. There's probably not one answer.
Right.
I think if there was one answer, we all might have done it by now. It's ever changing, and you really have to have like a really wide view of the industry as a whole in order to continue success.
Thank you so much for your feedback for this. Thank you so much for your inputs on this. Michael, as in business, so in lives, maintaining precision in healthcare logistics has triggered staggering fundamental changes which have impacted our lives and surroundings like never before. There are millions who are reaping a very rich harvest of opportunities, and there are bystanders, many lives more watching in amazement, unaware of the long sweep of this emerging, or not to say emerging, but this something which is very evolving nature of this field. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you. Really appreciate the time, the questions. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, Michael.